Welcome to City Talk, where we try to figure out what these people do all day. And by these people, I mean city employees. Today, we're lucky enough to meet two police officers who work for the Department of Public Safety and obviously Pittsburgh PD. Say hello to Sergeant Tiffany Costa. Tiffany, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're working from home, I take it? That's a lovely home background you have?
It's actually my day off, but yeah, I am working from home.
Oh, okay. So how did you first become interested in police work?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I was actually a teacher, and I was struggling with my job, and my husband suggested I take the police test, kind of as a date. So we went to take the test, and then we had lunch, and then the results came, and the results of the test came, and this has become my new life.
Okay, so let me get this straight. As a date, instead of like just going out to lunch or going out to dinner or going to a coffee shop, you guys decided to go both of you take the test to be a police officer.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a dorky person. I really like taking tests, and he knows that about me. So he was planning on taking it anyhow, so I gave it a try.
So you took the test, and to your surprise, you did well on it because you weren't even necessarily thinking of becoming a police officer prior to that, correct?
No, it really had never crossed my mind, to be honest.
And then did you think, hey, if I've got an aptitude for this, maybe I should pursue it?
Yeah, and I thought, well, let me go through the process. It's a pretty long process, and I thought it would be interesting to see how far I could take it. And lo and behold, I took the test on November 6th, and then I was offered the position the next August to join the next recruit class.
I don't mean to ask you to go into a long, convoluted explanation, but what kinds of things do you have to know or are on the test in order to become a police officer?
On the written test, to be honest,
sure, yeah.
I don't remember that much. There was a large portion that was like personality characteristics. And then there was also like some memory test, and then also kind of discerning descriptions from victims or witnesses to see, like, to narrow down what the best result would be.
And then I assume there was a physical portion as well.
Yeah, so after the written, then you have to pass a physical, agility. So you have to sprint, you have to run 1.5 miles, you have to do sit-ups, and you have to do a bench press.
And that was all challenging, but doable, I guess, in your case.
Yeah, it wasn't that challenging, actually.
Okay. Well, it's a good thing you happened to be in good shape when you decided to take a test for a lark, yeah. So what does your position involve now?
So now I am the sergeant of the community engagement office, and I work with Chief Schubert to kind of promote a community policing mindset citywide.
And what does that mean?
So it means supporting our community resource officers and our neighborhood resource officers to be able to do their job to the best of their ability, and to kind of support each other. It means building relationships within the community, and police, supporting community events, visiting schools, visiting senior centers, just building relationships, building trust with the community, and also some public safety education pieces too. How
challenging and difficult is it to build relationships with the community? Not very, or in these times, maybe a little more than one might expect?
Well, every day is different, right? So we never know what's going to come at us as far as like nationwide news goes. And so it can be difficult, but it's also like a measure of humanity, relating to people, empathizing, understanding, and being genuine and authentic about it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Costa is your married name, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I've run into about 5,000 Costas since I've been in Pittsburgh. Do you have like 8 million relatives?
Nope. No, so my husband's family is from north of Pittsburgh. So
okay.
I'm sure in some far convoluted way we are all related, but
right.
It's my impression that Costa is similar to Smith in Italy.
I see what you're saying. How about that? Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from New Swickley Township. I graduated from Freedom High School.
Awesome. And whereabouts do you live these days? I'm not looking for an address, but just the neighborhood.
North Side. Brighton
That's
Heights.
right. Brighton Heights. And you've even been doing some community policing on a personal level around Brighton Heights because there had been some activity that wasn't good.
I mean, yes, I helped Zone 1 acting commander think about ways we could reach out to the community. And so we organized a group of CROs, NROs, and some of the zone leadership, and also some community leaders, including Councilman Wilson, just to go out and talk to the neighbors and understand what their experience has been like. Brighton Heights is a large community, so we kind of just walked around and talked with folks and trying to get people to feel safe based on kind of a rash of violent incidents that have occurred.
And what kind of feedback are you getting from the folks?
Everybody so I walked around with a community member and another officer, and we had a great time chatting with people, hearing what their experience is like, any incidents. A lot of people said everything was great. There were a few neighbors that were concerned about issues, and we just listened and took notes and passed that on to the investigatory branch. And also, people just like seeing you out and about. The first question is always, is there something wrong? What's happening? And we'd like to change that. It would be really nice if officers walking patrol or walking a beat was a more normalized.
I never even thought of that. Somebody knocks on the door, you open it up, and it's a police officer, and you're like, "Oh my God, what's something wrong?" I guess that I can understand why you'd want to change it, but you can understand why people might react that way, at least initially.
Yep.
Wow. So how have you been coping with COVID?
Hunkering down pretty much, trying to keep my kids from going crazy.
And has anybody contracted it or?
My mom and my brother had it. My in-laws all had it.
How are they?
They're okay now.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Long recovery though.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad they're recovering. So did that just get spooky and spookier for you when so many of your relatives kept coming down with that?
To be honest, so my family, we live here in Pittsburgh, but all of my in-laws and my family live in Beaver County and Lawrence County. So the crossover, we had been avoiding contact anyhow since my position and my husband's position as a firefighter are as essential workers. We come into contact with so many folks. So we were avoiding contact anyhow.
Do you also run or help run a camp for kids to meet police officers?
I participate in the camp. I have for many years, actually. It's called Cops and Kids Camp. We had to cancel last year because of COVID, and it looks like this year we're not going to be able to host the camp either. But it is a week-long camp, totally free to residents of Pittsburgh, kids ages 8 through 12. And it's just a week where police officers serve as the camp counselors and coordinators. We hang out with the kids, we mentor a little bit, lots and lots of field trips and fun activities to showcase Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I have a friend who, among other things, is a comedian, but who also does an anti-bully musical comedy program for kids. And she said she did one of your camps. Pardon me?
Gabby.
Yeah, Gabby Gabinesso, and spoke really highly of the whole thing. Said you guys did a great job, and the kids were enamored.
Yes, I met her years ago, and once I learned about Josh and Gab, now just kind of Gab, right? We invited them to come to the camp, and it's been a huge hit every year. She's amazing.
Awesome. So have you developed any hobbies or habits or anything because of the isolation of COVID that you didn't have before?
No, I've always been kind of person who, when I have free time, I either read or do crossword puzzles. So none of that was really inhibited by COVID, thank goodness.
But maybe you're reading more or doing more crossword puzzles.
So my goal every year is to read 52 books, one for each.
Whoa, no kidding.
And 2020 was the first time I actually met that goal.
I feel horrible now. I've never come close to anywhere near that.
Well, don't give up on yourself.
What? I won't. Thank you. Just because you just said that, I'm not going to give up on myself. I was this close. So now I'm curious, what kind of nonfiction, fiction, both autobiographies? What? Okay.
Anything. I used to steer more towards fiction, and I would allow myself like a one contemporary novel for every classic novel I read. But now my interest has kind of extended all over. So I've kind of switched back and forth between fiction and nonfiction now.
And what kind of nonfiction? I mean, history or biographies, or once again, just any?
The last book I read was a nonfiction book I read was called Chasing the Scream, and it was about the war on drugs.
Wow. Good book.
Best book of 2020.
What did you learn that maybe you didn't know?
Well, so the comparison was between the war on drugs once drugs were prohibited and the like gangster violence that began in the 20s when alcohol was prohibited. So it was kind of an argument for alternative plans to illegalizing drugs.
Oh, so more treatment and less lock them up and throw away the key.
Correct. A lot less criminalization of addiction.
And you don't necessarily set departmental policy, but did that make some sense to you?
Yeah. So one of the programs we're working on now is creating a North Side pilot for an adult pre-arrest diversion program. And some of the charges that would be considered qualifying for that program would be drug charges.
Here's a question that just popped into my head. Do people, I'm sure you can't do it or won't do it and wouldn't do it, but do they ever ask you to fix tickets?
Ha! It's been a couple years since I've written a ticket. Yeah, so every now and then, like a family member from Beaver County will call and be like, "Hey, can you help me with this?"
Yeah. And are they disappointed to find out that there's nothing you can do?
You know, we all have certain ethics that are important to us, right?
There you have it.
And if you break a law, I think you should be held accountable.
Well, now that people are starting to get shots in the arms, and I realize it's very early in the game, but is there anything you're really looking forward to that you haven't been able to do once things, relatively speaking, get back to normal?
Yes, traveling and visiting friends out of state.
Getting on a plane?
Yeah, I would get on a plane, well, with a lot of personal protective equipment on, but yes, driving most likely to start.
All right, cool. Well, I think that we can about wrap it up. Is there anything, you have any final words, final thoughts?
It was nice to meet you. We've talked on the phone, but I never got to see you face to face, so it was nice.
Very nice to meet you. You have a wonderful face. And would you recommend a career in law enforcement for your average human out there, or at least you're above average human, since I'm assuming it's a very difficult job?
I think that it is the most wonderful job I've ever had, and I highly recommend that more women get involved in this field. And I'd love to see lots and lots of Pittsburgh Public School students as they graduate and start to think about careers. I'd love to see them join us.
Awesome. Sergeant Tiffany Costa. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us on City Talk.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we'll meet another Pittsburgh police officer. Stay with us.
Hey Pittsburgh, it's your Mayor Bill Peduto. Have you been thinking about housing? Have you been thinking maybe it's time to see if I can buy my first home? Or maybe you're living in your house and you have some expenses and you're not really sure if you can afford it? Maybe you're a renter and you're wondering, I wonder if there's a program out there for me. What if there was one place you could go to answer all of your questions? When it deals with housing in Pittsburgh, the city now has a site. You can go to the City of Pittsburgh Housing Assistance Resource Portal, HARP, H-A-R-P, and be able to have any of your questions answered. Whether it's, are there programs to help me to fix my roof or to put in a new furnace? Are there programs to help me to buy my first home or my second home? Or even, are there programs out there that can help me to pay my rent? And it's a resource guide in order to be able to answer any question you may have. So before you sit down with the bank, before you start to look to find out what it is you think you can afford, visit our site, find out the programs that are there to help you, and then find that dream home.
Welcome back to City Talk. As we record this episode, it is International Women's Day, so we're glad to have another female Pittsburgh police officer. Say hello to Sergeant Colleen Bristow. Colleen, welcome to City Talk.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. So if you don't mind, we chatted on the phone and you told me about an incredibly harrowing incident maybe 10 or so years ago that had a big effect on your life when you first became a police officer. If you don't mind sharing that with the folks watching this.
Sure. Back in September of 2010, I was responding to a robbery in progress in the north side section of Pittsburgh. I was met by 3 armed men that I foolishly, as some may want to call it, chose to pursue. And I stuck with one of them, and he was the getaway driver, and he happened to drag me with his vehicle, and I was put off of work. I had traumatic brain injury, back issues, broken elbow, multiple things that a lot of people believe to be a career ender, and I was off of work for a few years, and I wanted to prove them wrong and show them that I could come back, and came back better than ever, I believe, in my mind. So
I have no doubt, and we admire your bravery and your stick-to-itiveness and your resilience. Were you hanging on to the door or to the back of a truck, or?
yeah, my leg. So my leg, the door was open, and my leg was wedged onto in between the door and that. So yeah, I don't remember much.
Yeah. But now, so when you counsel police officers just starting now, you would tell them perhaps not to do something like that. In other words,
Yeah.
In retrospect, you what do? Wait and look for backup and then go try to find them?
Yeah, so that's actually like what kind of led me to my career in the training academy. So I like to use that space to, remind future officers that they're human beings with limitations and things like that, and how to do, use your brain first before you make, not jump into rash decisions, and we do stress inoculation trainings to make sure that they're, they overcome that immediately, that your brain naturally goes to, that, your reptilian brain, let's override that a little bit and make better, smarter decisions.
Well, you've certainly got a lot of street cred for them to listen to you.
Yeah.
And tell us about the training academy and what that involves.
Yeah, so we have a really fantastic training academy. It's actually become nationally recognized. We go above and beyond what the state mandates us to do. We've incorporated a lot of trainings meant to, end stigmas, within our occupational culture. So we have a prison program where we take our recruits into a joint learning environment with men behind bars out at Fayette State Prison.
And this is so they'll recognize that they're human beings and not just,
Yep.
arrestees. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, we break the stigma down, that, a lot of most people come in with training from Hollywood, very much so with, they see criminals as different. Like we try to do our best to make sure that us first them mentality doesn't go into their brain, and they just realize that they're dealing with humans with the same issues, same family things, same as they have. And it works both ways in the program. We also want to break down that the men that are inside see us as adversaries and see that we actually want to help them.
What kind of feedback do you get from the officers regarding getting to know some of the prisoners?
Yeah, they're really very surprised. They do say that they go in with, the typical stereotypes of, people, or, the criminal mindset. They're always like, wow, my God, like they're so intelligent in there, and like the men write poetry, and they're like, that's not what I expected at all. And they find so much commonality, and they're like, yeah, because everybody makes mistakes. It's just some people's mistakes land them here, and other people, they're not caught for their mistakes, or just there's a multitude of different things, but they really see the humanity in one another, and they see so much in common with one another. And it and another thing, like what we never learned in the training academy historically, was like how much of what we do in law enforcement, how much it affects someone's life. So I really like to make sure that when the recruits are in the academy, that they really realize, when we put an arrest on someone, there's so much of an after effect that comes from it within their families and things like that. So let's make sure that that's actually the best thing to do with them. So just to
Oh.
keep the humanity in policing.
You have an example of what somebody might be deprived of because they have an arrest record?
Well, so like one thing we always talk about is I never knew if you put a drug charge on a child, even any person, not necessarily a child, but especially a child, they no longer can get federal student loans. So you're setting people up for failure. You're being a part of not helping them in becoming a productive member of society. But no one just ever told us that. So it's just really real things that we need to know about. Or maybe it's a single parent household, and now we're taking the parent out of a single parent household, or we're creating a single parent household. Like all of those things that we just don't, we never were really taught about before.
Interesting. Where are you from originally?
I am from Dormont, the Keystone Oaks High School.
Awesome. And what made you want to become a police officer?
I didn't. So my sister's a police officer. My parents are from Homewood, Brushton area of the city of Pittsburgh, and they grew up in impoverished and maybe my parents are older. They had a different historical look at policing that I think is common amongst people within that group. So they were a little taken aback when my sister chose to join law enforcement. And my sister has always been one of the fairest, most honest people I ever knew. So I was like, okay, well, she's doing that. And I was in school for biology. And my sister said, why don't, I was finishing up and I needed to get a full-time job because medical school just wasn't going to be in my life. I was a single mom at the time. And she said, why don't you take the police test? I was like, no, that's your thing. I still very much had the historical bias from my parents of law enforcement. And so she talked me into interning at the special victims unit. And I was mind blown. I was like, wow, the police are really there trying to help in, they're in really, really terrible situations that they see, and they're really trying to connect people immediately to services. And it's not just this, like the carceral lens that I had of policing was really changed there. And I was like, wow, I could really like boots on the ground, try to help people. And Pittsburgh Bureau of Police does a really excellent job of that. So I'm really glad that she talked me into it and I got to see that, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, you're the second, at least initially, reluctant police officer we talked to today. We talked to Sergeant Tiffany Costa earlier, and she kind of fell into it also.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most rewarding thing about being a police officer?
Being able to help people, to really you see people in these really very intimate, critical moments that other people never get to see. And I respect the citizens for so much for inviting us into that space and allowing us to be there to try to help them and serve them.
And how have you been coping with COVID-19?
So that's actually why I had told you the story before. That happening to me, at such a young age has given me such an appreciation of life. So I just live every day like it's not, I shouldn't say like it's my last, because that's a little crazy talk, but I really honestly appreciate every day of my life. So not to say just like everyone else, there's bad days during this pandemic where, and it's okay. You have that bad day, but you don't let that bad day turn into a bad week, bad month. It's just that bad day, its own space. And then, wake up and start a new day tomorrow, and remember how fortunate I am to wake up and start that new day tomorrow.
Good for you. So you haven't wanted to kill any family members or pets or,
Well, I fortunately get to still go into work. So
Okay.
My life is still pretty, and it's my own new normal, but it's still, my husband and I both actually still get to go to work every day. So that's been, we haven't had to deal with the stress of income loss or anything like that. And luckily our kids are under the age of school. So I really give the parents a lot of credit that are navigating this with schoolwork and everything else. It's really, really trying time for people.
I take it you'd recommend a career in law enforcement.
I would. And that's one of the things I'd actually love to see is people that necessarily didn't go to school for criminal justice and understand that you don't have to go to school for criminal justice. I love the people that come in like myself or Tiffany, that outside perspectives and just a different way of looking at it. I love when I meet people that have gone for science, because I think we have a very unique way of looking at things that is different. It drives some of my coworkers nuts because their brains aren't wired that way, but that's how, like, our brains get wired for doing research. So it's a very interesting, different perspective. So I love when women, of course, I love when women do it. Women just have
Yep.
that natural art of de-escalation. But
Is that right?
Like-
I'm sure you don't want to besmirch the character of any of your fellow colleagues who happen to be male, but are
No.
women better? But are women better at de-escalation, as you just said, generally?
generally, I
think-
mean, of course, I hate to put any type, but
Right.
women, like, it's just, there's biology behind it. There's, the men are the single oriented, task focused hunter brain, where, we're the gatherer brain with a whole bunch of things coming in at us at one time that we're piecing together and putting into something, which is really excellent in policing. And I just even think, I think too, with some of it, like if a man is coming into the home of another man and, maybe there's some form of crisis going on in that home, and then you have another man coming in and telling you, trying to guide you through it. It's a little bit different than a woman coming in a supportive way, so it kind of takes like that on the other side of things too, like it's not a male challenging male, which is primal too, you know what I mean? So I definitely think women have a really great strength in that. I think, people just respond better to hearing that type of thing from a woman.
But and it sounds like, as Tiffany said, you'd like to see more women get involved in law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think women don't realize that you can have a family and do lots of things with your families. And it's very much pushed externally. Like if you go on like social media and stuff, like we miss birthdays, and we do, that does happen a little bit. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but it also can make a lot of time off for you. Like we do get a lot more time off. We only have to work 20 years and then we can retire. So there's a lot of family benefits to it as well that I just think people don't do a good job of highlighting. So I think that makes us lose a lot of consideration with women.
And how long have you been on the force?
14 years.
All right, so only 6 years till retirement potentially.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? That's what we need to start telling people.
There you go. So have you developed any new hobbies or habits, or you doing anything that you didn't used to do before COVID? Although it sounds like, as you said, your life didn't change that much.
Well, we were big travelers, so that's definitely been a big change for us. So we just try to hit the outdoors as much as possible. We go out, we have woods. We're fortunate to have woods behind our house, so we do a lot of hiking, just a lot of it escaping into nature since we can't travel right now. That was a big adjustment.
I bet. So that's the thing that you're most looking forward to when things return to relative normal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You going to the Caribbean or just,
Oh, everywhere.
Yeah, right. It's a wide open world.
Everywhere.
All right. So that should do it. It's very delightful talking to you. Do you have any final thoughts, final words, or anything you'd like to say to the humans out there?
Yeah, we'd love more women, just more people from different backgrounds. I love to see it. I love to see it, different educational backgrounds. Any type of diversity we could get in the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police would be really great. And if anyone has any questions about it, about the hiring process or anything, feel free to reach out to us and I could actually give you what it's really like.
All right. And final question, does anybody ever ask you to fix a ticket?
Yeah. Actually, my old neighbor quit talking to me because I wouldn't fix a ticket. So my own daughter, I have a daughter in college. She got a speeding ticket. I said, you get your speeding ticket. That's how you learn, honey.
Oh boy, what's the point of having a police officer for a relative if they can't? I'm kidding.
Oh man. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for appearing on the program. It was delightful talking to you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. You take care. Thanks for having me.
Sergeant Colleen Bristow of the Pittsburgh Police Department. That's it for this episode of City Talk. We will see you next time.